Okay, officially now, good afternoon. It's past noon. We'll try not to keep you too long. My presentation, I keep it under 2 hours. I promise you that. But I would like to thank you for being here today, and I would like to thank the CSI and steering committee, students, and all participants for being here today to bring this symposium, and I hope we'll repeat it in the future. I'd like to thank Thomas, sir, as well as Marlene and Gail for introducing the relationship and the differences and the connection between the arts and science, so I don't have to do this. I'll just talk about my work. Rim of Fire. Rim of Fire is a project, it's very important to talk about where I came from and the influences that I have went through my life and career as a youngster. I grew up in Galilee. I hope everybody knows where is Galilee. This is my village. It's about 7,800 feet above sea level. A beautiful space, beautiful place. And I grew up actually near Rim of Fire, which is a volcano, out of odd place that I spend a lot of time playing and enjoying the climate and enjoying the rocks and the metamorphosis of these places. Right about 500 yards from where I grew up, actually there is a fault, and that's happened through the earthquake during that volcano eruption, and that was part of the Jordan Valley. So we'll move on to bring about. I travel a lot, and this is one of my anchors, keeping in place wherever I go. I need a big anchor for 15 days, and travel to different symposiums throughout the world, and actually investigate and enjoy the landscape, enjoy the culture, enjoy all this, and that's part of actually my advancement as an artist. What's my influences? Earlier we spoke about Sumerian tablets. Actually, I wrote some of these myself. This is, you can see here the influences of the Arabic language. I read and write Arabic and Hebrew and a little bit of English. But these are my influences in my design that brought me on from day-to-day activity. The same thing, palm tree, texture, light, and this is kind of become later on, as I say, we influenced by our surrounding, by the landscape, by the sea, by the plant, by the motion of wind, and all this actually accumulate and communicate back and forth to me. The way I look at arts and science, we are on the same freeway except parallel lines. We're not one behind the other. We're parallel to each other. Both we do research. Both we do in the creative process. So the way I look at art is nothing but investigation into the natural formation, the natural beauty, and science the same thing does. Investigate into the microscopic, into the seismic, into the stratosphere, earth strata. These are some of the investigation. But the artists, we have a little more freedom. We don't have to have a conclusion and a report of a scientific at the end of the day. We have an object that deal with nature. These taken actually in Latvia. I was sitting by the sea one day and looking at the wind moving and shifting the sand, just like being on the Outer Banks, and see the surface texture and the direction and the motion of the wind. I enjoy the form as an artist. I'm thinking about the speed of the wind, but as a scientist, I have to measure the angle. I have to see the humidity. I have to find all these facts. And that's, I think, that's one thing different. I'm looking at the object of beauty, this, in terms of natural form. Yes, I can translate that into a sphere and this branching system and the repetition of form. And you can see that in some of my work later on, how these natural objects, natural formation influenced me. What's this? I'll move through some of my artwork real fast so we can. As I say, I travel around the world. I do sculpture. As an artist, I'm a sculptor. I have no preference to material as long as I'm making art. from carving stone, granite, casting concrete, carving marble, wood, any of these form, or cast iron or bronze, the end result is to be creative, is to make work. You can place me anywhere. If I'm placed in one place in the world where I have no marble, no wood, nothing, I'll figure out something to do. Maybe carve ice, carve snow. You can see here that's the one I made in Latvia, which was influenced by erosion and formation of the sand in that piece. The same thing, the relationship between stainless steel. And that's where the whole idea comes, and the whole notion of earth, water, fire, wind. And you can see the relationship, the way I built between fire, wind, water, earth. I know I switch them around to tell you the relationship between the iconography and the sanding. That's another language, the visual language. Maybe it's not written, but you can distinguish the form and the direction of the surface structure in the work. This is another piece in wood combined with stainless steel and bronze. And I'm looking at the bottom as the same thing, the transformation as a space. I want him to flow in space, to give him that weightlessness, to defy gravity visually. We'll move through these fast so you can have your lunch. And then,
Don't hurry.
I'm not in a hurry, don't worry. There's plenty of, these pieces, as I say, I'm interested in indoors and outdoors. I'm interested in the playfulness of the form and into defying gravity and repetition. And throughout these pieces that you will see, I see kind of bringing about both form, color, relationship back to nature, the building up of the different strata, the geometric form, and the relationship back and forth again between the sunrise, moonrise, all these kind of symbolism that I involve and put together. At the same time, I had a background. My background is in engineering, and that helps me into, for example, figuring out how to balance these form, the type of steel, the type of welding I need, the thickness of material, and all this have to come together at the end. It's just like an architect, like an engineer, like a scientist. This is my research, and I have to do this specifically. And we'll talk about it this afternoon in that relation as well. Same thing, the symbolism, earth, water, fire, wind. Bring both color, form, and separation and segmentation of these pieces. Influenced by landscape. I'm not a painter, but I paint my sculpture. And I'm looking at it, and this is kind of an abstract, three-dimensional, if you want to look at it as a painting or as a influenced by mountain landscape. I used to sit right at the edge of the cliff and watch the sunset. And these, some sort of the influence, the circle of the sun bursting, the cloud burning basically, and some areas start getting dark in the mountain. And that's what really activates my mind with that. The title of this sculpture, Opposing Forces, the magnetic quality that I was thinking about in the universe, and the radiating formation in that, and utilize the color of red against the yellow, against the blue, to bring some harmony within that piece. Usually I do all the work by myself. We have to skip this. I do the work by myself throughout the process, from designing to execution, welding, grinding, sanding, all this. And I'm trying to implement, hopefully, that in my students, a whole bunch of them here, is to really, the only way you can bring about some knowledge and some to humanity, and actually some to our community, and that's to be involved in your community. And in that sense of the relationship between indoors, outdoors work, and why it's so important to have artwork in our environment. How does that impact us as a society? And as we know, every great culture have a great art. You can't have, and we can see that the same thing actually, the relationship between the science and the arts. They run parallel to each other. Science changes, industry change, the arts change and move forward. And we see this in many ways. Now it's a digital age, all this done digital work with my fingers. And I move on to the work that you will see downstairs. I have a few pieces, about 7 pieces, 8 sculpture, which is done totally different than what we call it the lost wax process. This is something I stumbled on about 20 years ago by myself. I was influenced by one artist. I couldn't figure out how the artist did their work. And just like the scientists, they will be looking for some sort of virus and ended up finding a totally different virus or different. And that's what happened to me. I was looking into one direction in mold making, bonded sand, and I ended up with a totally different form and a different way of influence. But yet, I still influenced by my environment where I grew up. Looking at the strata of the landscape, looking at the geode where I grew up. Where I grew up, because it was underwater at one point and elevated, and the volcano eruption, we have thousands and thousands of geodes, some of them about 2 feet in diameter to about 6 millimeter or a 1/4 inch in diameter. And all these geodes, that was my job, collecting these and investigate. Look at the the crystallization and formation of these crystals. So me and myself and I together working. And what you see here, reversing, I'm reversing the process here because the process is not the lost wax process. Since it's lost, we don't know how to find it, so I figured something out. And that's this process. It's totally the opposite, and we can talk about it later if any of you are interested. But I do give workshop about this process. It's a magic because you do the whole piece in reverse. You start with the 3-dimensional form. You start with no pattern, then you will end it up cutting the sprues, cutting the vents, finding all this, and that's what's kind of bringing me back to nature. These are some of the end results of these forms. I look at it, when I was designing this, I was studying and learning about salt, and salt, basically, it's a cubic form. Salt. There we are. So so that's my cutting and directing. I want you to see in the inside as much as the outside form. Simple form, complex form. Simple mass to a complex form. Through these cutting and manipulating, bring you to the interior of that space as much as the exterior. And all these done one casting. So the whole form is done one time. Some of these pieces, about maybe 30 pieces together when I put them all together. The title, geocentric, and you can see the influence of nature, the influence of these. I used to travel every summer, me and my wife. She's an artist, which is great because she allowed me, we allow each other to go and converse and talk. We used to go to the museum in Colorado, as well as mine, and look at the structure and the microcrystallization of these structure of both, iron deposit, copper deposit, all other minerals, how they interact and how they mesh together in nature. And that will bring us to the rim of fire. And that brings me back to where I started, my village, my hometown, and how that rim of fire influenced me and influenced my work, and how is my work is all about. Yet, I'm taken from the artistic viewpoint, but kind of sideways, scientific way as well. And we take you back to the inner core of Earth. And I look at the Earth as a spherical form, more or less, with the inner core of iron, and the outer shell is the mold. So I'm looking at the Earth as my mold. I'm looking at Earth as the structure of life. And the volcano, basically, the branching system, all this, my cups and sprues and vents. And it's the cycle of life. Without volcano will not exist. Volcano give us warmth, give us a new soil, give us a change of life. That the whole transformation that takes place. And then the lava, which is, you will see my volcano, my rim of fire. This is about 36 feet in diameter by 14 feet in height, and it takes on a volcano form, just like the way I explain it. Yet, what I have done here actually calculated how many cubic yards it needs of soil, the foundation, the building up of the steel structure, a grid, and then collect tons of rocks in Latvia, Bet Valley, near, in Riga, near Riga, in Latvia. I was invited to create this sculpture in conjunction with the summer festivity, June 23rd. So what I have done here is collected the red, the white, black, and blue. And that represents the 4 elements: earth, water, fire, wind. And the way I located the red actually represents more of the sun. So that was facing east. And the white was the space or air, and the blue water. So that's how I came about. And it's in a spiraling motion. Oops, where is it? In a spiraling motion. As you can see, what happened is these individual elements come together and then spiral and erupt to create a new life and a new image. And that's my wife helping me. I help her with her project. So both of us worked on help each other with their project. That took about 10 days to complete. And that's the owner of the park here at dusk. And we did some firework to celebrate the summer. And that's me starting the ignition. And basically what it is, so what we have done is put wood in the entire around the rim. I started the fire with the lava flowing up, defying gravity rather than down, because bring it up. And then fire took over. And then we started with fire at the beginning, where the fire starts, fire ignite the volcano. So it's a hot topic here. And in the center of that opening, I placed about 36 rockets. Explosive rockets. And that's basically, it gives you the image of an actual eruption and live, and actually, and that's what happened at the end. It kept burning for over 12 hours. And that was our celebration, renewal of life. In real and in spirit. That's my wife's project, Jody. And this is my volcano, which will bring it back to casting again. the process that we do, casting iron, casting bronze, casting aluminum, we're reversing, except under controlled scientific way of pouring metal into the mold, being creative. And that's the difference between nature. You have no control. Here we have some control. And that's my end of my rim of fire. Hopefully your lunch will be warm.